For my digital portfolio, I chose to break up my digital portfolio into four different parts. The first part of my digital portfolio is part one, the technology lesson that I use with my students. Part two is using a technology tool. Part three was a lesson observation of another teacher who was using technology. And part four was a researched website that I was able to see how it would work with my students. So for part one, for my technology lesson, I used this in a fourth and fifth grade classroom, and we implemented an app called Padlet. So on our learning experience for class, we're working with fractions. So I had students use that platform to take pictures of patterns as they walked around the school in the hallways and in the classroom on their Chromebooks. So when they took pictures of each pattern, they would post them onto the Padlet platform. And we did that for a while. And then after that, I had students go back on and use commenting features on there for sharing how they found their fractions. So they went on comments and they said, well, I think this fraction was 1/10 blue. So then they would share that fraction language that the ELs really need to use when they're working with fractions. So the challenges with that lesson was that the students' comments were getting deleted. So I think that some students were possibly going in and, whether it have been accidental or on purpose, were deleting other students' comments, which the students were getting really frustrated with. So I also think that this challenge is that you have to monitor the posts closely. So I actually did a little lesson beforehand on digital citizenship about being responsible and respectful online and knowing that others can see everything that we post. And so I didn't have any problems with that, but I could see how using a Padlet could affect that, because everybody can see what's being posted right when it's getting posted before a teacher has a chance to monitor what it is. And the only other challenge is it only allows you to create 3 Padlets without paying for a subscription, so you have to make another email account if you want to do it for free. How I would make it better is, again, like I said before, teaching digital citizenship beforehand so that you don't run into problems with students being disrespectful or even posting the wrong things, staying on task. And then again, not allowing students to delete comments that others wrote. I also would see if you could make it better by being able to have it monitored by a teacher before it was being put through. I do like that it has a feature where it has a profanity filter where if it says there's a swear word, if it picks it up in the system, it'll put like an emoji to block it so that other students can't see the inappropriate word. The WETA standards that this affiliated with was WETA standards 2 and 3. So standard 2 was language arts and standard 3 was mathematics. And in all four, in the whole thing, it really used all four domains for listening, speaking, writing, and reading. For listening, students were listening in with their partners on the language that they were speaking about before they actually typed it. So 3/4 or 1/2 or numerator and denominator. They were speaking with each other about those things. With writing, they were actually typing and coming up with their thoughts for writing them down for what fractions each one were after they were speaking and listening to each other. And then reading, they had to go back and they had to read through all of the comments and all those posts, and they were actually also reading the fractions from each given picture that was taken. How this relates to other class. So in all the other classes I took, it really relates pretty well with it. It allows students to participate no matter what their language proficiency is. So they could just be taking a picture. We learned in our methods class that, some students are in different areas depending on when they started learning English. So depending on where they are, they're able to use this app in an effective way so that it fits them, whether it just be visuals with taking pictures or whether it be actually with written words, or they could even comment with speaking and recording it. It also includes visuals by looking pictures that others posted, and this app could really lower the effective filter because it's very anonymous. So you could have the names be of their names, or you could have it just say anonymous, and that way the students feel comfortable and their effective filter is lowered because they feel like they can post something and not be judged or be, criticized by what they put. And then here's a little picture of what our Padlet looked like with some of the patterns that my students found. And then there's a little zoomed in area where it says anonymous of the fractions. So 12/15 of the bookmarks on top of the red bin. And then I had them put their initials so that I could monitor the digital citizenship part, since this was the first time using this, just to make sure that I could tell who was saying something inappropriate if they were. So that was my part one. Moving on to part two, my technology tool. For my technology tool, I use Google Forms as a way for my students to use to get some data. So students created a survey to get information about a menu they will create in science. So a little background on that, our students are in a nutrition unit, and so they're working with calories and they're working with what's healthy, what's not healthy. And so in that learning experience, they have to create a menu. So I had students formulate some questions before they even saw technology. So they wrote down some questions that they thought would be helpful for how they could make certain menu healthy. So each group had like a fast food restaurant like McDonald's or Portillo's or Chipotle. And so they came up with those questions, and they had to have a target audience for who they're going to ask, which was our students in our class. And then English language learners can be given sentence stems to help guide their questions. So that could be something that we can help the students with if they were creating a Google form as well. My experience, reactions, and reflections. Students really enjoyed creating their own surveys. Once they got their questions written down, they were able to go onto Google Forms and create their own questions, mess around with the technology a little bit, and figure out how they were going to ask questions. Are they multiple choice? Are they written? Are they check boxes? And then, so it was a chance for them to use authentic data, also by forming questions. And then at the end, it gave them a chance to look at the results so they could read the data and the graphs to better help them make their healthy menu based off of what other people would prefer. And it guided their next steps. So the students, the reflection of that was they really wanted to do more, and they wanted to ask more questions because they enjoyed looking at the data and using that to guide their next steps. And then they asked if they could start creating their own surveys. So I think that Google form was a good experience for them. And then here's a couple of my groups, a little picture of what their surveys looked like. Some of them have some check boxes, some of them have answered the question, some of them have multiple choice. So now for my third part, the lesson observation, I observed another teacher in my school teaching my class how to use this app called Flipgrid. So this was again in a 4th and 5th grade classroom. The teacher used Flipgrid resource to introduce number talks in math. So the teacher would give a number to the class and a piece of paper, and they had to write down all of the different ways that you could come up with that number in different strategies. And then students are to go onto their app and they actually respond, and they speak it out. So they're recording themselves giving that number talk for other students to then go back and look at, and then they can respond and they can give comments with either video comments for replying or text. So we had to go and we had to really, the teacher who did this really focused on the digital citizenship part about it and how it's important that you leave good comments and good feedback rather than just saying nice job or good job. So how I would make this better is I really like, so I think it could be used across any other content area. So this teacher used it in number talks. I think it would be good in my class in literacy. We're doing book clubs. I think that would be a good way for students to get their comments out, and then they can listen to their other classmates' book talk conversations. And then I also would have students practice with a partner before creating a video. So maybe before it even gets onto the screen, just practicing so that they're ready. And then being able to include written comments to a post. So you can not on this site, you cannot write comments from my knowledge. You can just leave a video comment, or you could just hit a like button. So I'd like for the students to know, like, okay, why did you like that? And then how Flipgrid benefits language learners. It allows students to share however they are most comfortable. Um, so maybe they don't know a whole lot of strategies, but they can share what they do know. And it allows them to listen to others speaking the language. So by them listening, they can gain some of that language if they're still a newcomer, or if they're still learning how to speak the English language or whatever language it is that's being used. And then here's a picture of kind of what the number talk looks like, and then how the teacher showed what the number talk would be on the paper. So she actually gave the students a piece of paper that had a QR code that they could scan, and they could go to the page of the Flipgrid, the Let's Chat number talk. And so the students were able to easily access that, and they actually thought it was pretty cool that they could use the QR code to get to that same page. And then for my part 4, their website that I researched was an app. It was called the Book Creator app, and it's at bookcreator.com. So for my part 4, for my website I researched, it was really cool because students were able to use this this app and website to create a book on their own that had animations, and it's exciting and engaging. So I haven't used this with my students yet, but I think that they would really like it because of the different features that it has. So the good things about it is that it's engaging. It has different ways of being able to format, so it's not just like Google Slides, but you can actually create comics, and you could pick like the slides that you have for what the comics look like. You can record your voice in it, so you can actually read the book aloud, and then others can listen to the book that you wrote, that you're reading. And it has many features that are unique that students can play around with, that could make their book really seem more interactive with the reader. Some of the cons that it has is that it can be complicated for some students to use because of all those features. It really needs to be taught explicitly, I feel, to students, especially language learners, because looking at it, it doesn't really have a lot of visuals. It just has, you click on a button and then you go and you do that actual activity. So it might not be so easily accessible for some students. So for ELs, I think it is super beneficial for ELs. It allows them to add and create visuals the way that they want to. They just might need support, like I said a little before, about the usage of the app, but it also, I feel like, could boost their confidence by creating a book with different features and give them that final product that their classmates can look at and be a little bit, amazed at something that they all could produce. So those are my 4 parts of my digital portfolio. And I really like all 4 of these parts because I feel like they're things that I can start to implement and I can continue to implement in my classroom to make my students a little bit more aware of technology and how they can use it to help them in the academic setting, as well as at home.